Okay, so this is part 2, part deux, right? How about the absence of one is video number 2. Well, that doesn't make any sense. But okay, so back to the point here, folks. Back to the point is this. This is a non-existent, what Benatar is utilizing as a non-existent person, right? This is what I meant by he's pointing to a lingual artifact. He's not actually pointing to a real person. He's not pointing to a zygote, right? He's not pointing to anything that science can point to. All he can do is point to a non-existence and attempt to give it the attributes that an existent person would have, right? And when I say it's all good, right, it might as well be all good because over here it can be. It can be all good, it can be all bad, bad can be good, good can be bad, just like I was saying before about my hand or about the coffee or about the pepper or about Gary beating his monkey or about what it means to hold one's breath or so forth. Now, so here we go. See now, according to the asymmetry, right? The presence of pain is bad and the absence of pain is good, right? And that if somebody is deprived pleasure, right, that is considered a bad, right? But it has to be somebody that is deprived pleasure. It cannot be a non-person, right? Because if good and bad are based on what we like and what we don't like, then it all depends on the existence of that person. Good and bad cannot exist if the person does not exist, right? Because there's no one there to evaluate whether or not something's, in my case, good, bad, right? There's no one there to even argue and deny the first two premises because there's no one there. It's a non-person, right? Do you get that? Do you get that? Do you get that, folks? Right? I reject the asymmetry based on the absence of the individual, right? Altogether. So the absence of pain can be considered good. Even if no one is there, it doesn't make any sense. You see what I'm saying? If Benatar is going to say that good and bad come from what we like to say we don't like, then this already implies existence, right? And this would be like saying that a wrench is good even if there are no people around, right? A wrench, just being there, this brush is good. That brush is good. There's no one here to evaluate it, but it's good, right? It doesn't, that's the problem, right? Now, see, and then Benatar's response, and feel free, derived energy, to look this up and come at me again. Keep coming at me and do your popping your little jubilee dance, your little because all you're going to find out, right, is that in order for Benatar to back this up at all, right, he has to say that he has to imagine that there are pre-existing people, once again, like the pre-existent religion, that you can go ask, right, and try to make your epistemic basis of good and bad being correct apply to them. So it's a hypothetical. Well, if you could go ask some non-existent people whether or not they would be good to be out of pain, that would be fine. But so what do they got? They got a ghost pain, right? That runs into a ghost pleasure, and they're going to call it good or bad, right? The deprivation of pleasure as a bad seems only applicable to the existence. Okay, but enough about that, right? Enough about that. But what I'm going to say is this, right? If he wants to say, if nobody is deprived of an absence of pleasure because the person would have to experience that pleasure that never existed, the response to this is the person who would have experienced the presence of pain also never existed, right? So it kind of counters what he's saying. And so my response to the Benatarian asymmetry, my response that Gary wants to say, oh, you're being irresponsible, you don't understand the birds and the bees, or that if you hump, there's cause and effect. At least Gary said prevention. Prevention of what? Prevention of something he could point to. He didn't point to nothing. He still said the prevention of something he could point to, right? But so here it is. The absence of pain is good. The absence of pain, right? Let's absence pain. That's pain. Let's get rid of it. It's good to absence pain if somebody is present to experience the absence, right? So take that to the bank, Benatar. Now, if no one is present, then, and then I'll just add, if no one is present, then neither the absence nor the presence of pain is either good or bad, right? So it doesn't matter. If there's no one there, it's neither good nor bad. Now, if no one is around to experience the absence of good pain nor presence of bad pleasure, right? So that's what I'll say, right? If you're going to maintain it, if you're going to keep pointing to the non-existence, then I'll say, well then, nobody is around to experience the absence of good pain, right? The pepper. There's no non-existent person to experience that good pain, right? Nor that bad pleasure. Right? There's no one around to do that, right? So then that leads to the next moment, right? The next argument, which is this idea that the antinatalists should not kill themselves because when they're alive, they have interest to be alive, right? You have an interest, right? You're alive already. You might as well continue to be alive. But to begin existence is implying an unnecessary harm. It implies a non-existent interest, right? Right? Once again, the only thing that can be pointed to be said, right? The only thing that can be pointed to is something that exists, right? So once the egg is fertilized, once it's fertilized, it's in existence and it has an interest, just like you, just like me, to stay alive. Now notice when you read Benatar's asymmetry that he uses the word good, right? Here's bad and pain, and here's good. Now, instead of saying bad and not bad, it's bad or it's bad and good. Where in another instance, he'll say it's bad, but it's not good, right? It's bad versus not good. Okay, so he conveniently places these switcheroos, right? Because he doesn't want to say that good and not good, because this is what I mean by being stuck on logic, right? The people that are bounded to it, that actually let it feed their lives and they argue it with a passion as if it makes up the substance of their being, right? If their ego is somehow locked into a logical argument, they already need to take this outdated notion of good and apply it as an adjective to something that is supposedly desirable and pleasurable, right? Now, I'm not going to deny the tenets that bad can be applied to pain and that good can be applied to pleasure. I'm just going to add and shift them around and say they can definitely overlay one another. Good and bad, right? Pain, and pleasure. PP. Pain and pleasure, right? That you can have a bad right here in this Venn diagram, and you can have a good right here, right? You can have that. You can have it all, right? So I'm just gonna let you guys respond as you will. Gary wants to say that I'm not being real, but I'm switching around to say if you don't bring something into life, right? Now if this is sentience, right? Pain and pleasure and the combo with good and bad and all of the above, right? Now the tautology is what I was saying before. Now we're existing with pain, with pleasure, with goodness, with badness, with everything else. We got the whole gamut, right? Now, the thing is I say it's all good, right? Because I like to start out with the idea that good is that which is the default, right? And that bad is what pops up. Now, I don't expect there to never not be a popping up bad, right? I don't expect it to remain in some static position, right? And I like the idea of making certain that maybe pain is minimized, right? The little thumbtick idea, right? But this whole idea of falling down on the bunny slope, go boom, and making all of existence because it has this bad, to call it a harm, and to say one should not go into existence, right? The one that they're pointing to is already not existing, right? It's only a vernacular twinkle in the eye. So I guess I just kind of got to repeat that. Now, depriving someone from eating peaches, which is pleasant, is good if the abundance of that good will cause harm, right? That's my other additive. Let me read it again. Depriving somebody of eating peaches, right, which will be pleasurable, depriving someone of pleasure, right, depriving that little sliver of pleasure, right, which Benatar would say is bad, that's a deprivation, but deprive them of that pleasure of eating peaches is good if the abundance of that good will make them so fat, Gary, that no one can say it's socially fat and to be ridiculed out of existence. Don't you know? Blah, 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 blah. You stinking retard. You stinking fool, Gary. You idiot lockdown. Right? You want more? Come at me. I got it all written up there. I got all the tautologies. I got all the possible logic that you want on all the Benatarian argument. Everything that I need. I didn't even know any of this was here until tonight. My response to you guys was just pulled out of my ass last time, and now I realize just how right I was. Right? Just how goddamn right I was. So, just remember to add, the absence of pain is good only if someone is present to experience the absence of pain. Right? Beginning to exist and continuing to exist have exactly the same interests. Because you can't point to something that isn't pre-beginning to exist. Once again, it's not that I'm not responsible. I know where babies come from. I know where they come from. I know that you got to stick food in their mouth, right? And I know that you guys think that there's a lot of suffering and a lot of pain, and it's a dynamic, right? It's a dynamic universe with all the goodies, right? But it's a flip-flop, right? It's almost so important. It's almost your duty to bring in this suffering and then minimize it. To bring in this supposed non-harm, right? Because it only ever is. It's never not what it is. So you guys continue to ram each other, you and Morph, Gary, and Breeding derived over for the little bro bucking. I'm certain he'll add to the gay masturbatory hump so you guys can just jam yourself out of existence, right? And then I have nothing against people that choose not to have kids. And I admire people that do have kids. But I think people that bitch and moan and hold on to this, I think they're fools. I think they're fools, and I don't think that their minds are adequate, if they're locked on it, to see the converse logical relationship that they're holding on to, right? If I'm wrong, let me know, right? Let me know, Gary. Let me know, Gary. Oh, and let me know, Gary.